Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm head of product for Instruqt. We're really excited to have Brendan joining us. Just before we get going, we're talking about Instruqt and we're talking about Prefect. So Instruqt is, as most of you hopefully know, we allow you to let users try your product for real environments, real exercises, everything inside a contained environment. So they don't have to go through all the installation rigor. They don't have to have your accounts. They can get going with your product, try the features and capabilities so that they can decide they want to know more, or so that they know how to use it and they can get the best out of it. And then we have Prefect, which Brendan will champion in a moment. But just a quick overview is that Prefect is used to orchestrate the data and machine learning pipelines in Python. It's about observability. It's about making resilient workflows. And as AI gets built into more and more things, being able to actually simulate and demonstrate these capabilities and let people get their hands on is becoming more and more important. So that's why we're a perfect fit. And over to you, Brendan.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah. Hi, folks. Brendan Dalpe. I'm senior sales engineer here at Prefect. I'll be walking through kind of the stuff that we've built over the last 10 months here with Instruqt. Basically, how we've gotten onboarded and ramped very quickly as a small team. So, we're about 45 folks at Prefect. We're a very small, lean team, and we wanted to build something that is taking us faster with less folks and be able to do things more efficiently in the agentic era here. So really excited to show this today. Kind of a high level, what I'm going to show to the folks on the webinar here today. We started out with this DevOps idea. How do we take the Instruqt content and use something like GitHub, for instance, to master all of the content, keep everything composable, use things like pull requests to make updates, be able to validate that everything works as expected. And then as part of the journey, we added into this a skill to be able to work with things like Codex or Claude or Cursor, any of the tools that you would use for agentic development, to be able to build courses faster, to be able to make updates, to really leverage the deep integrations that Instruqt has, and give the agents the ability to understand the Instruqt command line, all the different nuances of writing Markdown, and then really give it the Prefect voice. We have a very specific voice that the marketing team wants us to use as we give our course content and publish that. So building that into the skill helped us really refine this and make it useful for us to not have to spend lots of time building content and do this faster. So building Track then and now, kind of as I mentioned, it was somewhat time consuming. The first course that we set up is nothing that Instruqt, but is more us. Like, hey, we have to manually build all this content. I got to go to the documentation. I got to copy paste, and I got to make sure that everything works correctly. Manually validate, and that's time consuming. And I don't really have the time to be dedicating to building content all day. I have a sales engineering day job, so I have to be talking with customers most of the day. So how do we become more efficient? This is where the skill does all the scaffolding for us. It does validate automatically in GitHub Actions CI/CD workflow. So this allows me to collaborate with more folks outside of Instruqt, not directly in the platform itself. And so we have this DevOps experience that we like as a team. So basically taking a concept saying, I want to do a new course on X in Prefect, let me do that. And so now doing like a one shot of that is possible to have a proof of concept available. So our initial journey started on our website, prefect.io/learn, and we wanted to publish our content in an accessible way for folks to not have to sign up, not have to do anything other than, go to our website, click on a course here, put in some basic marketing information that we capture as lead into Salesforce, and then this would give them access to the Instruqt content itself. So, we worked with our marketing team to get this all built into the website. We're actually pulling this content dynamically as we build our site in Vercel. This goes out to the Instruqt API, grabs all of the course information, grabs information about how many people taking the courses, how many challenges are in this, the metadata, et cetera, and puts this here onto our website itself. So this is not static. This is actually dynamic and built as we update our website. So from a course development perspective, we started initially just developing within the Instruqt UI itself, but we realized that Instruqt actually had a very powerful command line utility that we weren't leveraging. And so this allowed us to come to our local machines and take the track content locally in Markdown and be able to edit this and then push and pull as we worked on the content itself. So this lent itself very well to our idea of a DevOps first kind of training regime, if you will. So when we went over into GitHub, we built a GitHub repository here. And so this is actually public. If you go to github.com/prefectlab/learning, you can actually see all of our course content here. It's not meant to be hidden or private. We want folks to collaborate with us and if there are updates or typos or things like that, be able to work with us and collaborate on building this course content out. So we did here is built a very simple GitHub Actions workflow. And so this does kind of two things. On a new pull request, this basically does a validation. So find the tracks that have been modified, go through this, and basically validate that everything is working as expected. So which tracks have been modified, and then from here, now, depending on if we're pushing or doing a pull request, set up the Instruqt command line, check the assets. We'll talk about this in just a second here. We're leveraging this to bundle some content. Run track validate if this is a pull request, or if this is a push, again, rebuild kind of the course assets and then push this up to Instruqt. So I no longer need to go to the Instruqt user interface to make basic updates. I can go use my IDE of choice and do a pull request, have everything work exactly as needed, make sure everything's going to be valid, and then have this pushed into Instruqt. So very simple. And this is our first step here. So with that, we said, okay, what's next? We are super AI pilled, and we wanted to do is build a skill to make it much easier to author courses. And so this is specific to Prefect itself. We have some very specific marketing language and things that we like to use here, but this skill allowed us to teach the AI tools, that the LLMs, to understand what the Instruqt command line is doing, what commands needed to be run. So this starts out kind of high level, how you should use this. One of the things that we discovered and we keep having to add into here is the LLMs love to be super verbose. And I find that the content that they build is probably about 20%, I'm sorry, 80% more than what a human is really capable of. So lots of comments, lots of extra code, very verbose, very decorative. And so being able to tell it, hey, keep it simple, keep it very simple. We want just one very short idea to be communicated as part of the Instruqt tracks as we do this in each of the challenges. And so this also explains out how the structure works for the Instruqt CLI, for everything locally, the CLI cheat sheet, how to author this content. So we have some other files in here that talk about the specific, again, marketing language, the file formats themselves for the schema, content design. So the tell, show, do kind of kinesthetic learning for folks, making sure that the content is designed in such a way where it teaches, it explains, and then basically makes folks be able to do this. So you're welcome to steal this. I think Alex is going to talk about some stuff that Instruqt is offering, but if you wanted to adapt this for your usage, that's totally fine, and we would love that. So with this too, basically explaining out some of the internals of the skill itself. This is the content design, so a little bit less on the technical part, but more of how do I guide the LLM to do and build content exactly as we need it to do for the Instruqt challenges themselves. So just structuring out each of the challenge content. Hey, you need to tell people, you need to show people, you need to have folks do stuff, and then write out these assignments. So this is what good would look like for us in terms of an example. There's a lot of stuff in here, and feel free to read on your own, but then also building out a lot of the extra stuff here for Instruqt specific things on scripts themselves. So how to do evaluations of the challenges themselves, how to build the solutions, how to clean up after yourself. So this allows the authoring environment to make sense of all of those very intricate pieces of this. Voice, I won't go too deep into this, but this is the marketing language and kind of ideas that we have around how the actual language should be explained to folks in terms of the content that is built. So, we want this not just to be dense content, but why does this matter? What is actually useful from this, and really explain versus just giving a bunch of examples as part of the content itself. And then a lot of just schema here. So explaining everything to the LLM, how to build this out, how to add all of the YAML assignments, the front matter for markdown, etc. So a lot of this comes from the Instruqt CLI itself. So as we make edits, this is useful for the LLM itself. So just as an example, this is all great in practice and things like that. So this is a pull request that I'm working on right now. We have a lot of content that we call Prefect Accelerated Learning. And this is a course that we give to new folks that are coming on board. And this has lived in other tools, and we wanted to bring this into the Instruqt platform itself. So this is something that I basically pointed at another GitHub repo and told my cursor ID, go and basically slurp all of this and put it into Instruqt using the skill here. So this actually goes out and takes that content and then creates the examples here as part of each of the challenges. So this is nice. This is a lot of work that I didn't have to manually copy and paste. This took, I think, about 20 or so minutes for it to kind of churn through as part of that development cycle that I had. So, refining this, validating it, making sure everything works as expected. But yeah, I mean, this is a lot of content in here that would have been something that I would have had to adapt and use and build and test, and it was very simple to set up. So yeah, with that, we'll go back to the slides here. And
Brendan,
I know there's some questions in the chat, so happy to kind of take some of those now as we go through this. So is this process harness or model specific? No, it is not. This is something that can be adapted for really anything. As we go through, as new models come out, we can test those and validate it and kind of benchmark like which models are producing better course content, things like that. I find that OpenAI's models are a little bit more humanistic in terms of the explanations. Claude or Anthropic's are a little bit more focused on the code itself, and I think you can kind of see their differences there. So we test and validate between kind of both of those providers as we build this content out. Did you create any skills to review existing content? No, but that actually is something that I would love to do as kind of this next validation step. Right now, we're just doing Instruqt CLI, Instruqt course or track validate, really just checking, does the formatting make sense? Does the JSON or YAML schema make sense? And would it be accepted if we uploaded it today? So really, it's kind of just the validation step of, is this something that could be sent over to Instruqt without any errors? Now, I would love to see some type of adversarial skill here that's validating the content that's being built against what we talked about, or I talked about here in for instance this verbiage, like, is this actually what got built from the agent itself? Same thing with the content design. Does this make sense? Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing in terms of the course content? So I think that's next steps here as we go through this process. New question here. My understanding was that the GitHub repo version control only supports one track per repo. How did you work around that limitation? Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So we are not directly using Instruqt's GitHub integration. So for folks that have questions about that, the Instruqt system supports essentially one repo, one course, and you can tie this together. So what we did inside this GitHub repo here is, in the workflow itself, you'll notice there's two jobs that run. And this first job here, this is actually doing a check where we're looking to see which files are being changed. So basically take the git commit before and after, give me the git diff of all the file names, and then based on that, find which courses are being modified. And so when this runs, it's checking to see which of the courses have been updated, and that passes this into this next step here. So we use this matrix strategy for this CI job. So this will spin up, let's say I modify 2 tracks as part of this, will actually spin up 2 CI jobs, and it will run on both of the courses that have been modified in parallel. So you can see that matrix track is being passed into this here. Same thing, we're doing change directory into the actual track itself. So this allows us to have a mono repo style of all the different course content here inside this courses directory of each of the tracks themselves for all the content that's underneath it. So yeah, it's not something that we're directly doing with the Instruqt platform, but more of just how we built this inside the GitHub Actions workflow.
Thank you very much, Brendan. I think that's very cool. Actually being inspired by you and some of our other customers who have done a similar process on their own. So I'm not going to bury the lead. We are releasing we'll come back to this slide, but I'm just going to keep going with Brendan's narrative here. We are releasing a track builder plugin. This will be entirely, I think we can all agree Brendan is the man. Thank you, Matthew. This will entirely be working with your Claude Code work, and you would be able to do almost everything Brendan has shown you here today, and a little bit more. So the ability to review content using our best practices is also in there. We use the Instruqt validate, much like Brendan was showing you there. We've added a track test command, and we've added a skill to the plugin so that you can actually review the track itself against rubrics that have the best practices of your content. And it will give you a score, it will give you a recommendation in certain places, and you can decide to update your track based on those recommendations. Obviously, the user is the expert, not the AI, so it's best if you make the final decision. So a little bit more just about the track builder. So starting very much with what Brendan mentioned about voice and tone and consistency and accuracy, our track builder plugin will allow you to run a command initially at first to research your company. It understands who you are. It will research your product, and it will research the voice and tone that your brand puts forward. And you can tweak any of the resources it creates to your liking. But what this does is sets up a very solid context that you and the rest of your teammates could actually use to create all future tracks using the AI plugin that are accurate, they don't hallucinate, and they are on brand. So that's a really solid way to start your track builder or building a track. And then from there, a step that we took a little bit further is that within our plugin, you will say what kind of track you want to build, right? What are you trying to achieve with the users? What's your learning objective? And the plugin will prompt you back and forth if it doesn't have enough information. And it's ideally trying to create a plan for your track that delivers on the audience. So what's the expertise levels here? How should I talk to people? Do I make assumptions that they understand a term, or do I need to make sure that that term is explained initially? So it's really setting to understand your audience and then build the content that will fit exactly for your goal and how that audience understands the information you're presenting. It's a really good place to actually spend more time. You, by building out this track plan at first, you're saving yourself tokens, you're saving yourself a lot of back and forth, you're saving yourself a lot of frustration at thinking a lab is or a track is broken. So this planning really sets you off on a good foundation. Not only will it tell you the instructional design, but it'll also tell you what kind of resources you need. It's going to create what sandbox composition it has, the scripts that you have, checks, setup, cleanup. It will break it down per challenge as well. And then from there, it will present that plan back to you. You can run the review command right there at that moment, and it will score itself against the rubrics, against the plan at that point, if you want to, or you can move on to actually generating. And then you can start to generate your challenges. So you can go one by one if you're kind of a control freak like myself, or if you've got a little bit more faith, you could generate all challenges at once. While it's going and while it's building, the AI is running the validation commands and the test commands every step of the way, right? So it is making sure that it is building something that functions to the best of its ability, right? AI is still AI. You are the experts. It's good to always check the work, but it is doing its utmost best to validate and make sure that everything is working as expected. And then you're ready to play your lab or your track. And with the plugin, you can also, you start up your track. If you find you're running into an issue, you can open up the logs and you can actually just copy those logs directly and paste it straight back into the session you're running with your Claude Code. And it will pick up that feedback and start to iterate, checking the plan and the context that it has. And it will iterate on the track, identify the issue for you, and help you move forward. So this all goes to what Brendan said at the start, is that building tracks takes time. It is a lot of work and it requires a lot of attention and effort. And with this plugin, we're hoping to streamline your workflow and make it easier for you to keep going. Cool. So that is us providing the track builder plugin for you right now, only working with Claude, but we will be bringing it for Codex in the future as soon as possible. Then we're also going to, just a sneak peek on 2.0 in September, there will be an in-product lab assistant to help you build. So you will actually have AI inside of the product as well to help you build if you want and need that. All right, Tyler, so sorry to muck you around. Let's head back to the other slide. So that's how you can use AI to build tracks, and that's cool. It's going to help you go faster. It's going to, like Brendan says, he's got a job as an SE talking to customers. He doesn't have as much time to build content as he would like. This is going to make that easier. But there's another big need that's coming up that we see at the moment, and that is that you need to be able to create a lab that actually has AI running inside of it so that you can show your capabilities, so that you can prove to your users that your AI works and it's not just vaporware sitting there with false promises. People are highly skeptical at the moment, and they want to try your AI capabilities before they actually believe your selling promise. So with that, we've released a couple of features that are going to allow you to better support AI inside of your labs. we are adding Vertex and Bedrock support in the cloud accounts. So you will be able to actually enable the Vertex and Bedrock service for your cloud account, and then access most of the models that sit behind the Vertex and Bedrock doors. And that way you can compose the kind of workflow that you want with AI resources. Sometimes you're going to need more power. It depends on your product. It depends on what you're trying to achieve with AI, but sometimes the CPUs just don't cut it, right? So what we've introduced is GPU support. You can reach out to your customer success teams if you want to get this enabled for your team or learn out a bit more. But this is really going to help you get more out. It's going to give you more computing power if you're running workflows that require it. And we're very fortunate with these releases that they've actually already been tried out in the wild by many of our customers. And we actually have a great quote here from Keith at the Google Cloud Security team, and how he was able to run his workshop with a dedicated Vertex environment per participant, which just wasn't possible before in any other tool. So those are the main releases we have coming this month. There is more, and they were out as of tomorrow. The link will be in the slide as well, with docs that will tell you exactly how to install it. I'm just going to jump to questions because we're out of time now. I see here, will the AI track builder be available for GitHub Copilot also? We'll go and have a look at it. Right now, it is not available for the GitHub Copilots. Transferring skills out of a plugin to Codex is not the toughest challenge, but I do not have enough knowledge of how Copilot works to give you that answer right now. But I hear you, Monica. I hear you, Saeed, and I will go back to the smart brains that actually do the good work and see what they think is possible and how we could achieve that. So thank you very much for joining us. Brendan, thank you so much to you and to the customers who build skills like this and go that extra mile to build on Instruqt. We value it. It's amazing. It's part of the reason many of us continue to work with Instruqt. You inspire us to build you a better product. So thank you. I bid you adieu and have a great day. Thank you for joining.